Imagine the echoing chants of a secluded convent suddenly shattered by the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel. What if your sacred vows of chastity and devotion were torn away in an instant, your body and soul subjected to horrors designed not just to break you, but to erase your faith entirely? This was the nightmarish reality for countless Christian nuns under Ottoman rule, from the bloody fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the empire's crumbling end. Their story reveals a systematic campaign of abduction, abuse, and forced conversion that decimated Christian communities. Yet it also whispers of unbreakable resilience. But how did such organized cruelty unfold, and what lessons does it hold for us today? Stay tuned as I uncover this dark chapter of history. If you're new here, hit subscribe for more gripping tales from the past. Welcome back, history lovers. Today I bring you into the shadowed corridors of the Ottoman Empire, where the clash between East and West wasn't just about territory, but about the very soul of civilizations. To understand the horrific fate of Christian nuns, we must first paint the vivid backdrop of this era, time of conquest, cultural collision, and calculated oppression that spanned nearly 5 centuries. Let's set the scene in the mid-15th century. The Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of ancient Rome, was crumbling under relentless pressure from the rising Ottoman Turks. Led by the ambitious Sultan Mehmed II, known as Mehmed the Conqueror, the Ottomans were a formidable force, blending nomadic warrior traditions with sophisticated Islamic governance. The political climate was one of expansionist fervor. The Ottomans viewed themselves as the rightful heirs to the Roman legacy, destined to spread Islam across Europe and Asia. Major conflicts raged, from the sieges of Balkan strongholds to naval battles in the Mediterranean. But the pivotal moment came on May 29, 1453, the fall of Constantinople. As chronicler George Francis, a Byzantine eyewitness, lamented in his memoir, the city was captured, and the emperor was killed. The Turks slaughtered without mercy, and the streets ran with blood. This wasn't mere warfare, it was a symbolic triumph, renaming the city Istanbul and converting the Hagia Sophia into a mosque, signaling the erasure of Christian dominance in the region. In this atmosphere of triumphant conquest, cultural norms clashed violently. Ottoman society was structured around Islamic law, or Sharia, which classified non-Muslims as dhimmis protected but inferior subjects. Christians paid the jizya tax, faced restrictions on building churches, and held lesser legal status. Natus, a Christian's testimony in court weighed less than a Muslim's, creating a fertile ground for unchecked abuses. As European diplomat Ogier Ghiselin de Bouzbek noted in his 1555 letters from Istanbul, the Turks regard Christians as little more than cattle, to be used or discarded at will. This inequality wasn't accidental, it was a tool to maintain control over conquered populations. Now let's delve into the key figures and complex relationships that shaped this tragedy. At the heart were the Ottoman sultans, from Mehmed II to later rulers like Suleiman the Magnificent and Abdul Hamid II. Mehmed's conquest set the precedent for treating Christian clergy as threats to imperial unity. The ecumenical patriarchs of Constantinople, spiritual leaders of Eastern Orthodoxy, became pawns appointed and deposed at the Sultan's whim. Between the 15th and 19th centuries, 11 patriarchs were executed, nearly 100 bishops slain, and thousands of priests and monks persecuted, as documented in Ottoman administrative records. Few died naturally. Many faced hanging, drowning, or poisoning. The family tree of Ottoman power was intertwined with alliances and rivalries. Sultans often married captured Christian women to legitimize rule or produce heirs, but this hid darker exploitations. Rivalries with European powers like the Habsburgs and Venetians fueled ongoing wars, where Christian communities became collateral. Locally, Muslim irregular forces, or Bashabazouks, allied with the state to raid Christian enclaves, driven by promises of loot and slaves. Into this turbulent world entered the nuns women who had dedicated their lives to prayer, poverty, and chastity in monasteries scattered across Asia Minor, the Balkans, and the Levant. Their early lives were shaped by devout families in Christian villages, often entering convents as young girls to escape poverty or arranged marriages. Take a typical nun born in the 16th century to Armenian or Greek parents. She might have been tutored in scripture by local priests, learning to read ancient texts amid whispers of Ottoman tax collectors. Formative events included famines or plagues that drove families to seek divine protection, planting seeds of faith. But early scandals foreshadowed doom rumors of raids where monasteries were looted. As reported in Venetian dispatches from 1520, the Turks descend like wolves, carrying off the young and virtuous to their harems. Primary sources paint a grim picture. Ottoman ledgers, now housed in Turkish archives, meticulously listed convents' inhabitants, ages, and assets, treating them as resources. European consular reports, such as those from French envoys in Syria around 1890, as detailed unpunished crimes, no Muslim has ever been convicted for the rape or abduction of a Christian woman. These debunk the myth of Ottoman tolerance. While the millet system allowed some religious autonomy, it masked systemic erosion. As historian Halil Inalcik notes in his works on Ottoman history, this was a facade of protection over deliberate demographic engineering. Even in their cloistered early years, nuns felt the encroaching shadow. A letter from a 17th century Greek abbess, preserved in monastic archives, warned the infidels eye our walls not for stone, but for the souls within. This foreshadowed the conflicts to come, where personal devotion clashed with imperial ambition. The atmosphere was thick with tension, church bells silenced, icons hidden, and communities living in fear of the next tribute demand. As we move forward, remember this context: an empire built on conquest, where faith was both a shield and a target. But the situation was about to escalate into outright horror. Now, let's journey deeper into the heart of this tragedy. While our subjects, the Christian nuns, didn't rise to power in the traditional sense, the rise here refers to the escalating Ottoman mechanisms of control that turned sporadic raids into a systematic machine of abduction and abuse. I'll break this down chronologically, focusing on three pivotal phases: the immediate aftermath of conquests, the institutionalization of processing, and the economic exploitation that sustained it all. Each phase builds like a storm, with its own tensions and devastating impacts. First, picture the chaos following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, city in flames, its defenders slain, and survivors herded like livestock. This marked the initial key event: the mass raids on religious institutions. Ottoman forces, under Mehmed II's orders, targeted monasteries and convents as symbols of Byzantine resistance. As the Byzantine chronicler Ducas recorded in his Historia Turco-Byzantina, the Turks burst into the holy places, dragging out the virgins dedicated to God, violating them before the altars. Young nuns, often in their teens or 20s, were separated from elders. The old were executed on the spot, beheaded or burned in their cells to eliminate witnesses and spiritual guides. The young faced abduction, marched in chains through jeering crowds to slave markets. Why this choice? Mehmed's strategy was psychological warfare, aiming to shatter Christian morale. By desecrating sacred vows, he demonstrated Islam's supremacy. The immediate consequences were profound. Thousands of nuns vanished, weakening church hierarchies. Long-term, this set a precedent for future conquests, like in the Balkans, where similar raids during the 1460s, 1480s reduced Christian populations by force. For the dynasty, it bolstered Mehmed's image as a Ghazi, or holy warrior, consolidating power among Muslim elites. But for the nuns, it meant a brutal transition from serenity to slavery, many forced into harems where, as Venetian ambassador Andrea Gritti reported in 1503, They are compelled to renounce their faith or face endless torment. Transitioning to the 16th century, under Suleiman the Magnificent, we see the second key event, the bureaucratization of abuse. Imagine opulent Istanbul palaces hiding grim facilities, specialized centers in cities like Bursa and Adrianople, designed for processing captives. Ottoman military manuals from this era, as cited in archival studies, outlined protocols. Raids began with intelligence from spies, noting the number of females, their ages, and purity. Convents were surrounded at dawn to prevent escape, valuables looted, and inhabitants categorized. Young nuns underwent stripping of their habits, a symbolic defilement, followed by head shaving and assignment of Turkish names, erasing their identities. Forced conversion ceremonies blended indoctrination with violence. Refusal led to isolation in cells, with restraint mechanisms, as archaeological digs reveal drainage systems for maintenance. Sensory details heighten the horror, the metallic tang of chains, the acrid smoke from burning scriptures, the muffled cries echoing in stone chambers. A 16th century Ottoman legal code justified this. The infidel woman is property of the faithful. Her conversion honors Allah. Causes stemmed from imperial needs, population control, and military replenishment. Suleiman's choices reflected a shift to administrative efficiency, turning conquest into governance. Effects rippled Christian communities fragmented, with villages abandoning faith out of fear. Dynastically, it funded wars through slave taxes, but sowed seeds of resentment, fueling uprisings like the Greek War of Independence in 1821. For individual nuns, the psychological toll was immense. Survivors' accounts, smuggled to Europe, speak of souls fractured beyond repair, as in a letter from an escaped Armenian nun in 1580. They took not just my body, but my light from God. But the drama intensifies in the third phase, spanning the 17th, 19th centuries, the breeding programs and economic commodification. Tsapini. Visualize hidden compounds where nuns were evaluated like merchandise, physical exams determining their value for harems, labor, or reproduction. Ottoman medical texts provided clinical instructions. Maintain the captive's health through controlled diet to ensure viable offspring. Impregnated women were monitored. Children seized at birth boys for the Janissary Corps via the Dev Shirmi system. Girls for perpetuation. This wasn't random cruelty, it was economic strategy. Nuns fetched premium prices in markets due to their education, as ledger entries show one Greek sister, literate, sold for 500 akçe. Raids became revenue streams, with transportation network ships with ventilated holds moving thousands. A British consular report from 1899. Nightjamakoritilo monastery Mars Japer and abduct nuns, loot monasteries, and force conversions publicly. The suspense builds in these accounts. Would a nun resist, facing burial alive in stone pits designed to prolong agony, as per legal codes? Why pursue this? Declining Ottoman power demanded renewable resources, per historian Suraya Faroki. Choices reflected desperation. Abdul Hamid II, in the late 1800s, escalated raids amid territorial losses. Immediate consequences: over 2 million Christians vanished from Asia Minor, per demographic studies. Long-term, it accelerated the empire's fall, alienating allies and inspiring genocides like the Armenian one in 1915. For the nuns, it created generational trauma offspring raised as Muslims, severing lineages. Throughout, cross-referenced sources debunk myths of benevolence. European reports align with Ottoman records, revealing not chaos, but precision. As we approach the climax, consider the human cost. These women, once beacons of faith, reduced to cogs in an imperial machine. But the peak of this horror was yet to come. If you're gripped by this intensity, pause and hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications for more unflinching history. And for exclusive deep dives, check my Patreon link in the description. As the Ottoman Empire's grip tightened, the fate of these nuns reached its devastating peak crescendo of institutionalized terror that blended religious zealotry with cold bureaucracy. Slowing our pace, let's immerse in the moment-by-moment horrors, drawing from eyewitness accounts to reveal the emotional abyss they faced. This climax unfolds in the late 19th century amid the Hamidian massacres 1894-1896, when Abdul Hamid II unleashed waves of violence against Armenian and Greek Christians, targeting nuns as emblems of defiance. Alkiro Izias. Imagine a convent in eastern Anatolia, 1895, the air thick with incense and fear. Raiders Kurdish irregulars backed by Ottoman troops encircle the walls at twilight. The abbess, sensing doom, gathers her sisters in prayer, but the doors splinter under battering rams. As French consul Gustave Merrier reported in coded dispatches, the intruders separated the women. The elderly were slain with bayonets, their blood staining the altar. Younger nuns, dragged screaming into the courtyard, faced the ultimate humiliation, public stripping and mockery before crowds, symbolizing the conquest of their vows. The tragedy deepened in processing centers. Transported in chains days of thirst and exposure, survivors arrived broken. Here, the psychological warfare peaked, forced to witness conversions or executions. Many succumbed to despair. Ottoman records detail resistance protocols. A nun refusing Islam might be isolated, subjected to repeated assaults until compliance. Eyewitness Paul Cambon, French ambassador, wrote in 1896, "Poison is suspected in many deaths, but the true venom is the systematic violation that drives them to madness or suicide." Mysteries shroud these final moments. Was death merciful or prolonged? Theories abound. Some suggest secret poisonings to silence witnesses, evidenced by autopsies in European reports showing toxins. Others point to honor killings by families. Post-abduction, but evidence leans against this. Ottoman legal interpretations, as in fatwas from the era, viewed captives as property, discouraging waste. Debunking the myth of voluntary conversions, primary sources like British Blue Book's 1895 reveal coercion. Nuns were told their families were dead, their monasteries ash, leaving no path but submission. Weighing evidence, organized abuse seems validated by archaeology sites with mass graves near convents, bones showing signs of restraint and trauma. Conspiracies? Abdul Hamid's regime coordinated with local elites, per telegrams uncovered in archives, target the veiled ones to break the infidels' spirit. Against this, some theories of exaggerated reports by biased Europeans hold little weight cross-referenced with Ottoman ledgers. The scale matches. The emotional impact, resignation, and final letters smuggled out, like one from a Syrian nun in 1894, "I go to God, my body defiled, but soul intact." Despair peaked in breeding facilities where pregnancies ended in separation, mothers hearing infants' cries fade. Contemporary medical analyses, Mycene Phyto, such as Ottoman treatises, treated this clinically. The vessel must be preserved until delivery. For many, death came slowly, starvation, disease, or self-inflicted to preserve dignity. This climax wasn't a single event, but a sustained apocalypse, decimating communities. The atmosphere fog shrouded mountains hiding screams, the metallic scent of blood mingling with gunpowder. As we reflect, the true tragedy lies in the erasure not just of lives, but of legacies. The echoes of these atrocities reverberate through history, profoundly altering the Ottoman Empire's trajectory and the fate of Christian communities. In the short term, the systematic targeting of nuns accelerated demographic shifts. By 1924. Christians in Turkey plummeted from 20 to 2, paving the way for the modern secular state under Ataturk. Dynastically, it weakened the Ottomans' resentment, fueled the empire's dissolution post-World War I, with the Treaty of Lausanne 1923, recognizing minority rights too late. Precedents set included the use of sexual violence as a weapon, influencing later conflicts like the Armenian genocide. Historically, portrayals have evolved. In 19th century European literature, such as Victor Hugo's writings, nuns were romanticized as martyrs, emphasizing heroism over horror. Modern media, like films on the fall of Constantinople AGG or Feti 1453, often sanitize Ottoman actions, portraying conquest as glorious, while downplaying abuses, a stark contrast to reality, as evidenced by consular reports. Books like The 30-Year Genocide by Benny Morris analyze this as deliberate policy, debunking tolerance myths. In my view, the true tragedy wasn't mere death, but the squandered human potential. These educated women, potential leaders, reduced to vessels. Yet, their legacy endures in preserved faiths, underground networks, smuggled scriptures, sustaining orthodoxy. It poses a complex question. How might history have differed if imperial powers prioritized coexistence over conquest? What overlooked acts of resilience in your own heritage mirror these nuns' unyielding spirit? Share your thoughts below to deepen our discussion. In unraveling this haunting tale, we've seen how the Ottoman pursuit of dominance forged a legacy of suffering, yet underscored humanity's capacity for endurance. The nuns' story is a stark reminder that power unchecked breeds monstrosities, but faith and community can outlast even the mightiest empires. Though shrouded in darkness, it illuminates lessons of resilience, cautioning us against repeating history's cruelties while celebrating the spiritual heritage that survived. Twos, thanks for joining me on this profound journey. Keep exploring the untold sides of history. If you found this compelling, please like the video to help it reach more seekers of truth. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into forgotten tragedies, and turn on notifications. Share your insights in the comments. What aspect shocked you most? For ad-free content and exclusive research notes, support the channel on Patreon at link in description. Check out my playlist on Ottoman histories for more. In our next video, we'll expose the hidden scandals of royal inbreeding that doomed dynasties. Until then, question everything.